The child's legs buckled 6 feet from the door. She collapsed face first into the snow on Christmas Eve, 1872. Barefoot, bleeding, her frozen fist still stretching toward a doorknob she'd never reach. 5 years old. No coat, no name anyone could recall. And inside that solitary Kansas ranch house, Thomas Hale was pouring whiskey into his only cup when he heard it. Not a knock, a whimper. The kind of sound that splits a man open before it fully registers in his ears. He set the cup down. His hand trembled. He didn't know it yet, but his life had just ended, and begun. If this story has already found its way under your skin, take a moment to subscribe and tell us in the comments which city you're listening from tonight. It means everything to know how far little Lily's story has reached. Now let's return to that brutal Christmas Eve on the Kansas prairie, 1872, when one whimper changed the course of a man's life. Thomas stood by the fire a long while before he moved. He told himself it was wind, told himself the prairie plays tricks on a solitary man, makes him hear children where there are only coyotes, hear weeping where there's only ice cracking on the roofline. But wind doesn't whimper twice. Good Lord above! He was at the door before his mind caught up with his boots, rifle in one hand, lantern in the other. The fire behind him popped and hissed like it was begging him to stay. He wrenched the door open. Cold struck him like a closed fist. The kind of cold that dropped calves in an hour and full-grown men in 3. And there she was. Oh no, 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 no. Face down in the drift, a tiny thing, smaller than the feed sacks he hauled from town. Her dress, what remained of it, was the color of ash and river mud. Her feet were bare. Her feet were blue. He dropped the rifle, dropped the lantern, didn't care about either one. Easy now, little one, easy, easy, I got you, I got you. He gathered her up and Lord help him, she weighed nothing, a sparrow, a ghost. He could count every rib through that threadbare cloth. Her head lolled against his shoulder like it wasn't fastened right. You stay with me, you hear? Stay with me now. Don't you dare quit on me, darling. He kicked the door shut behind him, carried her straight to the hearth, laid her down on the wool blanket he'd been using as a chair cover, the finest thing in a house where nothing was fine anymore. Her lips had gone grey. Frost clung to her eyelashes. Thomas Hale had buried his wife Mary 11 winters ago, had buried his boy Samuel 6 winters after that. He believed nothing remained inside him that could tremble. He was wrong. Come on, little miss. Come on now. Don't you do this to me. Don't you die on my hearth on Christmas Eve. He rubbed her tiny hands between his own calloused palms. Her skin felt like river stone, smooth and cold and terrible. You ain't dying in this house, you hear me? Not tonight. Not on my watch. He grabbed a pot from the stove, poured warm water, not hot. He knew better than to shock frozen flesh, into a shallow basin, wrapped her feet in cloth and eased them into the water bit by bit, slow as he could bear. He'd watched ranch hands lose toes to the frost, seen a drover lose an entire foot once, screaming the whole time. He would not let that happen. Not to this child. Not to her. She moaned. That's it. That's it now. Keep breathing. Keep breathing, darling. Her eyes fluttered, opened, closed, opened again, and she screamed. Not loud, not even what a grown woman would call a scream, just a hoarse, wet, terrified sound that clawed its way from a throat too raw to make it louder. She scrambled backward, hit the wall, curled tight against the cold boards, staring at him like he was the devil himself come to collect her soul. Don't. Don't. Please don't. Thomas froze where he knelt. Easy, miss. Easy now. I ain't going to hurt you. Please. Please, mister. I didn't mean to. I'll go. I'll go right now. I promise. I'll go. Child, listen to me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hey, hey now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. She was trying to stand. Her legs refused to hold. She fell, got up, fell again, still crawling toward the door, toward the snow, toward whatever frozen road had spit her onto his porch. Thomas Hale had broken horses his entire life. He recognized what a creature looked like when it had been struck too many times. He eased back on his heels, placed both hands flat on his knees where she could see them, did not reach. He didn't grab her, just spoke. "Miss, listen to me now. Listen real careful." She froze, still trembling, still trying to shrink into nothing. "It's Christmas Eve, ma'am. Ain't nobody stepping out in that snow. Not you, not me, not any living creature with sense enough to breathe. So you stay right where you are. You're not going to... What, little one?" She couldn't say it. Her mouth worked open and shut, but nothing came. He understood anyway. And somewhere deep in his chest, something that had been wound tight for 11 years went tighter still, then cracked clean through. "No, ma'am. Nobody's going to lay a hand on you in this house. Nobody's going to raise their voice. Nobody's putting you back out in that cold. You have my word. And around here, a man's word is the only thing that outweighs coin." She didn't believe him. He could see it plain as day. 5 years old and already done with kindness. He stood up slow, every movement deliberate, announced, "I'm going to walk over yonder to that table. You stay by the fire. You get warm. That's all there is to it, just warm." He crossed to the table, sat, kept his eyes off her. A man who'd gentled enough wild things to know that a gaze was pressure, and pressure was the last thing that child could bear. She watched him a long time, a long, long time. Then inch by inch, her back slid down that wall. She didn't come to the fire, not yet. But she didn't bolt for the door either. Thomas released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "You got a name, little one?" Silence. "You don't have to say, just asking." More silence. Then so faint he nearly missed it. "Lily." Lily. That's a fine name. Lily Carter. "Well, Miss Lily Carter, I'm Thomas Hale. This here's my place, been mine a good while now. Ain't much, but it's warm, and the roof hasn't leaked since '68. She was staring at the fire like she'd forgotten what flame was, like wanting it too much might make it vanish. "Lily." "Yes, sir." "When did you last eat?" She said nothing. "Miss Lily." "I don't know, sir. A day, 2? I don't know." "Fair enough." He stood. Her whole body flinched, sharp and total, as if he'd raised a fist. He sat back down immediately. "I'm just going to fix a plate, ma'am." "That's all. You stay put." He rose slower this time, moved slower, made each motion visible, went to the stove, lifted the heavy iron lid off the pot. Beans. Half a plate's worth, maybe less. A heel of dry bread, tough enough to drive nails. A thin strip of salt pork he'd been saving for Christmas morning. The last piece. That was it. The whole larder laid bare. Snow had come early this year. The drive to town took 2 days in fair weather, and no fair weather was coming. The sky had hung the color of a bruise for a solid week. He'd stretched what he had across 2 weeks, and this was all that remained. If he gave it to her, he wouldn't eat tomorrow, wouldn't eat the day after, most likely. Wouldn't eat until the roads opened, and only the Lord knew when that might be. He stood there holding that plate. Then he heard her stomach growl from across the room. A hollow, aching sound that had no business coming from something that small. Thomas Hale closed his eyes. Oh, hell. He carried the plate over, set it on the floor a few feet from her, not too close, not too far, drew a fork from his pocket, laid it beside the plate. "Eat." She stared at the food, didn't move. "Go on, Lily, it's yours." "All of it, sir?" "All of it." "But," "Ain't no but. You eat." "But what about you?" 11 years of silence on that ranch, and that was the question that damn near buckled his knees. He cleared his throat, twice. "I ate earlier." The lie came easy. Got a full belly already. "Truth is, you'd be doing me a kindness. Food spoils if nobody touches it." She looked up at him, And in those wide brown eyes, eyes that had witnessed more than any child's eyes had a right to witness, there lived something close to suspicion. She knew he was lying. She knew it, and she was still hungry. 5 years old, and she had no idea what to do with a generosity that surely carried a cost she couldn't name. "It's Christmas, miss." Thomas said it softer now. On Christmas, folks share. That's the only rule there is. You eat, and it means Christmas found this house this year. You don't, and I've got nothing. So help an old man out. Her hand crept toward the plate, stopped, crept again. She picked up a single bean, placed it in her mouth like it might shatter, chewed twice, swallowed, and then she broke. She clutched that plate against her ribs and ate, not the way a child eats, but the way something feral does, something that forgot what a table was for. Fingers scooping, no chewing. The bread went down in 3 torn pieces. She licked the salt from the pork before her teeth ever touched it, and she wept the entire time. Not loud, not wailing, just quiet water sliding down a filthy little face, dropping onto the plate, dissolving into the beans. Thomas Hale turned toward the fire, so she wouldn't catch what was happening to his own eyes. "Slow, darling. Slow down. Ain't going nowhere, I promise you. Don't you apologize for being hungry. Not in my house. Not ever." "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Hey now, stop that." He eased off his chair, lowered himself to the floor, a careful arm's length from her, legs crossed like a schoolboy. "Lily, look at me. Look at me, darling." She raised her head, plate still gripped, face still slick. "Ain't no crime in being hungry. You understand me? Ain't no crime in eating. You're a little girl. You're supposed to eat. That's how the good Lord made you. Mama said I ate too much." Thomas felt his jaw clamp so tight his molars ached. "Your mama said that to you. She said I was a mouth. She said mouths is what ruined her. Where's your mama, Lily?" Lily's gaze drifted to the door. "She told me to sit under a tree, said she'd come back for sundown." "And she didn't?" "No, sir." "How many sundowns ago, darling?" Lily tried counting on her fingers. They were still too frozen to curl right. 3, maybe 4. "I ain't real sure, sir. I slept some. 3 or 4 days." A 5-year-old child planted beneath a tree in early winter, waiting on a mother who had no intention of returning. Thomas Hale, a man who had stayed dry-eyed when his wife Mary died, who had not shed a single tear when his son Samuel died, who had gone 11 long years of hollow winters without once letting his face break, felt the heat rise behind his eyes. He cleared his throat. "Rough. You've been walking all that time?" "Since I got scared the wolves was coming. I heard them at night." "You heard wolves? And you walked? By yourself?" "Yes, sir. I knocked on some houses. Most didn't open. One lady gave me bread, but her man said I had to go. A man in a black coat. He said he'd take me to town, but he smelled like whiskey, and his eyes was wrong. I run from him." Good, Lily. That was smart. That was real smart. I didn't want nobody to hurt me." "Nobody's going to hurt you here." "You don't know that, sir." She said it flat, no bitterness. Just the bare truth of a child who had learned in 5 short years that this world keeps no promises. Thomas didn't argue, just gave a slow nod. "Reckon you're right, little one. Reckon I can't promise what I can't control. But I can tell you this. As long as I'm standing, ain't nothing coming through that door to take you anywhere you don't want to go. That I can promise." Lily studied him, long, hard, the way a grown woman might have if a grown woman had been folded up inside that small, starved body. "Why?" "Why what?" "Why'd you share your plate, sir?" "It was all you had. I saw the pot. It's empty." Thomas opened his mouth, closed it. He had no answer, not one he could speak aloud, because the truth was, he didn't rightly know why. Couldn't explain why, after 11 years of being the hardest man on this stretch of prairie. After 11 years of telling the church ladies to go to hell, the neighbor boys to stay off his land, the preacher to quit knocking and leave a widower to rot in peace. He couldn't say why he'd opened his door tonight for a whimper buried in snow. Couldn't say why his hands had gone steady the instant he lifted her. Couldn't say why this half-frozen stranger felt, for some reason beyond his naming, like something he'd been missing for a decade. Something he hadn't permitted himself to want. "Reckon I was hungry too," he said finally. "Just a different kind." Lily considered that. Her brow creased. She didn't ask what he meant. Maybe she already understood. She placed the empty plate on the floor, dragged her sleeve across her mouth. Her eyelids were growing thick now, that particular heaviness that arrives when a starving body is finally told it can stop fighting. "Sir?" "Yes, Miss Lily." "If I close my eyes, will you still be here when I open them?" The question sank into a place deep down, a place a man had no business leaving unguarded. Thomas swallowed. His voice scraped out raw. "I'll be here." "Promise?" "On my life, little one. On my life, I'll be right here." "Okay." She curled into the blanket, a tiny thing, arms wrapped around herself because there was nobody else to do the wrapping. "Sir?" "Yeah, darling." "My feet are warm." "I know, honey, I know. I ain't felt my feet in 3 days." "I know. Thank you, sir." "Hush now, go on and sleep." "Sir?" "Yeah?" "You're the first person in a long time that called me honey." Thomas Hale had to turn his face toward the fire again. A man his age had no right to be undone by a sentence like that from a child. She was out before he could answer. Dropped the way exhausted things drop, all at once, no warning, like a candle snuffed mid-burn. He sat perfectly still, watched her. Watched the firelight crawl across that thin, bruised, beautiful little face. And something he'd buried 11 years back, something he'd shoveled dirt over and sworn never to unearth, something with his wife's name and his boy's laugh knotted through it, came quietly, stubbornly back to life inside his chest. He didn't know her, didn't know where she'd come from or who'd done the hurting or what tomorrow held, didn't know how he'd feed her come morning, didn't know a single blessed thing worth knowing. But he knew this, and somehow that was the largest thing to happen to Thomas Hale in 11 years. He set a fresh log on the fire, sat back down at the table, picked up the whiskey he'd poured before all of this began, then put it down without drinking, slid the glass away from himself, pushed it across the wood until it sat beyond arm's reach. A man with a sleeping child on his hearth had duties that didn't mix with whiskey. He watched her breathe. Wind howled against the walls. Somewhere far off a coyote called. Snow kept falling, thick and patient, burying the tracks of the little girl who'd arrived from nowhere, who had knelt her way across frozen country to knock on the door of the last man who should have answered. Thomas folded his hands on the table, and for the first time in 11 long, frozen years, he bowed his head. "Lord," he whispered, so soft the fire nearly swallowed it. "I ain't spoke to you since you took my Mary. I ain't had much to say, and I reckon you ain't had much to say back. But this little thing on my floor, she's been through enough. You hear me? She has been through enough. So if there's any mercy left in whatever stock you keep for folks like me, save it. Spend it on her." "I don't need none. Just her." He raised his head. The fire cracked. The girl slept on. And Thomas Hale, widowed rancher, bitter man, stranger to his own kindness, sat up through the longest, quietest, most wondrous night of his life, watching over a child the world had discarded. Dawn broke the color of a bruise. Thomas was still at the table when it did. Hadn't slept 1 minute, hadn't moved except to feed the fire twice and tug his coat a little tighter around the sleeping girl. He watched her breathe. That was the whole of his morning. Her small chest rising, falling, rising, falling, like a man handed a newborn calf, terrified that if he glanced away, it had quit on him. Then her eyes snapped open, not slow, not groggy, wide, the way a hunted creature wakes. She sat bolt upright. Her hand flew to her chest like she was checking her own heartbeat. "Easy, darling. You're in my house. Remember me? Mr. Thomas." "That's right." "That's right, Lily. You made it through the night." She looked down at the coat draped over her, touched it with one finger, careful like it might bite. "Whose is this?" "Mine. You put it on me." "Sure did. Because you were cold." She pulled the coat off, folded it, tried to fold it, her small fingers fumbling with wool thick as a saddle blanket. She set it on the floor at his feet. "I ain't earned it, sir." "Lily, I don't take things I ain't earned." "Darling, a coat ain't something to earn. It's something a man gives when the nights run cold." "Mama said." "Mama ain't here." He said it faster and harder than he meant. He watched her flinch from it, hated himself for a full second before he spoke again. "I'm sorry, little one. I didn't mean to holler. I'm just telling you. You don't owe me for that coat. Not one thing. You hear?" She gave no answer. She stood, wobbled, caught herself against the wall. "Sir, where's the privy?" "Out back." "I'll walk you. I can go by myself. Snow's deep as your waist, honey. You'll walk with me, or you'll wait. Them's your choices." She chose to walk with him. He gave her his second-best blanket to wrap around her shoulders and a pair of old wool socks that came up past her knees. He carried her those final 20 feet, the snow too deep for her small legs, and she went rigid as a fence post in his arms the whole way. But she didn't fight him. Back inside, she stood in the center of the room studying the walls like a person memorizing a place they'd soon lose. "How long can I stay, sir? We ain't even had breakfast yet." "Don't you start planning your leaving before you've had breakfast." "There ain't no breakfast, sir. I saw the pot." He stopped, turned. "What do you mean you saw the pot?" "I looked last night before I slept. I peeked. The pot was empty. The bread box was empty. There's a bit of flour in the tin and a cup of coffee grounds, and that's the whole of it, sir." "Lily Carter." "You spied on my larder." "Yes, sir, at 5 years old." She looked at the floor. "So I'd know how bad to feel." That one put him in a chair. He dragged it out and dropped into it like his legs had surrendered beneath him. "Come here, Lily." "Sir." "Come here, sit." She came slow, stopped 3 feet short. He patted the chair across the table. "Sit down, child." She sat, hands folded in her lap, spine straight, a little soldier awaiting orders. "Now you listen to me, and you listen good because I ain't saying it twice. Is that plate I gave you last night the reason you think you cost me something? You think you're a debt? Who told you that?" "Mama." "Anybody else?" "The man with the whiskey breath. He said he could sell me for $4 if I was clean. Said I was worth $4 if I'd quit crying." The silence after that was the loudest that house had held in years. Thomas pressed both palms flat against the table, stared at them, breathed. "Lily, I want you to say something for me." "Okay. I want you to say, 'I ain't for sale.'" "I ain't for sale." "Say it like you mean it. Louder." "I ain't for sale, sir." "One more time. And this time say it like you'd say it to him." Her little chin lifted, and the look that crossed her face was not a child's look. Something older. Something kept alive in the dark far too long. "That's right, darling. That's right. Not for $4. Not for 400. Not for a whole herd of horses and a gold watch besides. You hear me?" "Yes, sir." "Now we're going to have breakfast." "Sir, there ain't no—" "There's flour. There's a fire. There's a man who's fed himself off worse. We're going to have breakfast." And he rose, and he made biscuits. Flour, water, a pinch of salt, a scrap of lard he'd been saving for his boots. Rolled them flat on the table with an empty whiskey bottle because he didn't own a rolling pin. He slid them into the oven on a black iron pan. Lily watched the whole time. Never said a word. Just watched. Quote 0. Quote 1. Quote 2. He said it without thinking, then glanced up, worried he'd wounded her. But Lily was nodding slow, filing that away somewhere important. "Yes, sir. I reckon she was. When the biscuits came out, she ate one. He made her eat two. She cried through the second one, and she didn't say why, and he didn't ask. Then the knock came. 3 hard raps, a man's fist, the kind of knock that doesn't ask permission. Lily went white. "Sir, under the table, now. Lily Carter, under that table right now. Don't say a word. Don't make a sound. Don't you move till I say." She dove, quick as a barn cat, vanished beneath the long oilcloth that hung past the table's edge. Thomas crossed to the door, opened it a crack. It was Sheriff Bill Mercer, 60 years old, grey as fence wire, a good man far as Thomas had ever known. Thomas's hand tightened on the doorframe. His face stayed flat. A child. Little girl, about 5 or 6, brown hair, last seen up the Kingston road 4 days back. We got a man in town claiming she's his niece, says she wandered off. His niece? That's what he says. This man got a name, Sheriff? Calls himself Nate Pritchard. Don't know him. Neither do I, Thomas, neither do I. Thomas let a beat pass. Bill Mercer was reading his face. You ask him why his niece is wandering the Kingston road in winter by herself? Bill, I asked. And? Said she's prone to running. Said she's touched in the head. Said she'll fetch a reward if brought in quiet. A reward? $20. That's a powerful lot for a child, Bill. Ain't it just? The two men held each other's gaze, long, deliberate, 2 old bachelors on a frozen porch, with everything that mattered packed into the silence between them. Thomas did not blink, did not shift his eyes, did not move one muscle in his jaw. Bill Mercer held his stare. Then, slow as an old dog circling before it lies down, the sheriff nodded. The sheriff tipped his hat, turned his horse, and rode off into the drift. Thomas shut the door, leaned his forehead against it, breathed. Quote, 36. She didn't come out. Lily. Darling? He lifted the oilcloth. She was under there, trembling so hard, her teeth clattered against each other, curled tight as a fist, eyes crushed shut, both hands clamped over her mouth so not a single sound could escape. Oh, honey, is he gone? The sheriff's gone, darling. He's a good man. He's on our side. The other one, the whiskey one, Nate. Thomas's blood cooled about 10 degrees. Quote, 40. Quote, 41. He reached under the table. She crawled toward him, slow, shaking, and when his arms closed around her, she went rigid as a plank. Then, after one long, terrible second, she broke, cried into his shirt, soaked it clean through, gripped 2 fistfuls of fabric at his shoulders, and held on like she was drowning, like he was the only piece of driftwood on the whole river. She looked up, face red, wet, crumpled like paper. He held her until the shaking stopped. Near an hour it took. He didn't say a word the whole time. Just sat on that floor with a 5-year-old sobbing into his shirt, let his back scream and his legs go dead, and did not move. When her breathing finally steadied, he said soft, Lily? Yes, sir. I got to ask you something, and I need the truth. Can you give me that? Your mama, the one who left you under the tree, is she alive? Long pause. I don't know, sir. Is Nate Pritchard your kin? No, sir. Do you know who he is? He came around Mama's house before. Before what, darling? Before Mama sold me. The words struck Thomas Hale like a mule kick square in the chest. He had to close his eyes, had to count to 10, had to unclench every muscle in his jaw, one by one, so he wouldn't drive his fist through the wall and terrify her worse. Quote, 58. Quote, 59. Quote, 60. Quote, 61. Quote, 62. Quote, 63. Quote, 64. Quote, 65. Quote, 66. She didn't answer, just pressed her ear against his chest and listened to his heartbeat. like she needed proof it was still there.
"Sir?"
"Yeah?"
"He's going to come here. He's going to come to this door. He saw me run this direction, sir. He ain't going to quit."
"I know it, Lily. What are you going to do?" Thomas Hale looked up at the ceiling of the little ranch house he'd raised with his own 2 hands 22 years back, looked at the beams, looked at the coat pegs by the door where his wife's shawl still hung, unmoved for 11 winters. He stared at the corner where Samuel's wooden horse still leaned against the wall, dusty, untouched. Then he looked down at the child in his arms, a child the world had discarded like something broken, a child the world now wanted back, not to mend, but to break worse. He paused. She was silent a long while. He pressed her head back against his chest, and out past the window, far down Kingston Road, though Thomas Hale had not yet seen it, could not yet hear it, a second set of hoofprints was pressing slow and patient into fresh snow, coming straight toward the only light burning for miles. Thomas heard the horses before he saw them. 4 sets of hooves. Snow muffled the sound, but a rancher who'd spent 40 winters on this ground could count hooves in his sleep.
"Lily." "I hear them, sir." "Root cellar, now." "Sir,
Lily Carter, I am not asking twice." She went. He pulled the rug back, lifted the trapdoor, handed her the lantern before she could ask, set her down on the ladder with his own 2 hands. "How long do I stay?" "Till I come for you. Nobody else. You hear a voice calling your name and it ain't mine. You don't breathe. Don't blink. Don't move. They ain't going to get past you, sir." He stopped halfway through closing the door, looked down at that dirty little face in the lantern glow. "What did you say, darling?" "They ain't going to get past you. I know it." "Why you know it?" "'Cause you promised." Thomas Hale swallowed something the size of a fist. "Yeah, honey, I did." He shut the door, laid the rug flat, kicked the chair over it like it had always sat there, crossed to the cabinet by the hearth, took down the Henry rifle his daddy had carried out of the war, loaded it slow and steady, 16 rounds. The revolver on his hip held 6 more. 22 shots between a child and the men who'd bought her. Should be enough. The knock came harder this time, not 3 raps, a pounding. He let the silence stretch, let them wonder. 100. Thomas set the rifle in the crook of his arm, cracked the door 4 inches, no more. 4 men on horseback filled his yard. The lead man carried his weight in the belly and none in the face. Greasy black hair, a moustache that looked like it was swallowing his upper lip, eyes the color of dishwater. Thomas could smell the whiskey from 6 feet off. 3, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, a pause. If you let that hang, let Nate Pritchard hear how thin his own lie sounded when a sober man repeated it back to him. 119. He started to close the door. A boot jammed into the crack. Thomas looked down at the boot, looked up at the man it belonged to. One of the 3 riders, younger, thinner, a scar running from lip to ear that twisted his mouth into a permanent sneer. __quote _120__, Thomas said, very quiet. Thomas shifted the rifle, just an inch, just enough that the barrel drifted into the man's line of sight. "Son, I'm going to say this once, and I ain't. You lift that boot off my door frame, or I lift it off myself, along with the foot inside it." The boot stayed put. "Nate?" The scarred man spoke without looking away from Thomas. "Old man's hiding something. I can tell. Let's just push in." "In a minute, Cal. In a minute." Nate Pritchard swung off his horse, climbed the 3 steps to the porch, stopped just behind the scarred man. Close enough Thomas could count the pockmarks dotting his nose. "Hale, we don't want trouble. Then get off my land. That girl's worth $20 to me. I'll hand you 5 of it if you give her up quiet." $5? That's a month of provisions, old-timer. In cold like this, that's survival. I told you I ain't seen no girl. I believe you have. Then you believe wrong. Nate smiled. Nothing warm in it. Cal? Yeah? Go round back. Thomas said it loud enough the horses flinched. Nobody's going around back. Nobody's stepping inside. Nobody takes one more stride across this porch. You've got 10 seconds to be in those saddles. Or what, old man? Or I start putting holes in people. Over a girl that ain't even yours. Over a trespass, which it is. And the law sits on my side of it. Your sheriff will confirm as much when I ride into town at first light to report 4 men tried to force their way into my home. That landed on Nate. Thomas watched it flicker across his face, just a beat. The thinking. The arithmetic. A crooked man who'd reckoned he was pressing a lonely widower, suddenly understanding he was pressing a lonely widower who knew the sheriff by first name. The scarred man again. Thomas cocked the Henry. That sound was the loudest thing in the yard. Cal moved back, slow, his hand drifting toward his own hip. Thomas said. Cal's hand froze. Good boy. Now you and your friends climb on your horses, ride out the way you rode in, and don't come back. Because if you do, if I spot one hoofprint on this road that don't belong to a lawman or a neighbor, I'll quit asking questions. I'll start answering them with lead. We clear? Nate Pritchard held his stare a long time. This ain't finished, Hale. It is for today. I'll be back with paper, legal paper, saying she's mine. Then you bring your paper, I'll bring mine. We'll let the judge untangle why a man's niece ran 3 nights through a blizzard just to get clear of him. Nate's face turned ugly. Quote 160. Quote 161. Quote 162. Quote 163. They mounted up slow, dragging every second like they were daring him to blink. He did not blink. They rode out. Thomas stood on that porch with the Henry shouldered until the last horsetail vanished around the bend. Then another minute, then another. Then he sat down on the step. His legs were trembling. His whole body was trembling. He'd held it together for 9 minutes, and now it was pouring out of him all at once. The cold, the fear, the 11 years of forgetting what it felt like to have something worth losing. He sat there on that step in 10-degree weather with no coat, and shook. Then he stood up. Because a child was waiting in a dark cellar, and a shaking man wasn't what she needed. He went inside, locked the door, kicked the chair aside, pulled up the rug, lifted the trapdoor. Nothing. His heart sank a foot, a tiny voice far below. She climbed the ladder, 1 rung at a time. When her head crested the floor, he saw she was gripping something, a piece of metal, long, rusted, heavy, an iron poker from the cellar floor. Thomas took the poker from her hands, set it on the floor, picked her up, held her. Quote 171. Quote 172. Quote 173. Quote 174. Quote 175. Quote 176. Quote 177. Quote 178. Quote 179. She nodded into his shoulder. He carried her to the chair by the fire, sat down with her in his lap. She didn't ask to be set down. Didn't squirm or protest, just sat there, warm, small, breathing. After a minute she spoke. 1/4/15,020, she went quiet a long while. He figured she'd drifted off, but then her voice came again, different, smaller, older somehow. Mr. Thomas? Yeah, darling. You got a wife? I had one. She die? She did. You got kids? I had a boy. He die too? He did. How old was he? 3. What was his name? Thomas had not spoken that name aloud in 11 years. He'd carved it into a piece of wood and driven that wood into the ground behind the barn. Never once let it cross his lips since. Just had for the second time in 2 days, Thomas Hale wept in front of a child. Not hard, not loud, just enough to smear the firelight before him. He turned his face so she wouldn't see. She felt it anyway. Patted his chest twice, solemn, like a grown woman comforting a grown man. "I'm going to be good. I'm going to be good so you don't send me away. I'll work. I can haul water. I can feed chickens. I can sweep. I can sleep on the floor. I don't eat much. Lily Carter." "Yes, sir." "You listen to me now. And you listen real good." "Yes, sir." "I ain't keeping you 'cause you work. I ain't keeping you 'cause you don't eat much. I ain't keeping you 'cause you sleep on the floor. You ain't a hired hand, child. You ain't a boarder. You ain't a debt. You ain't a contract. You ain't something I bought." "Then what am I, sir?" He opened his mouth. The word came out before he knew it was coming. "Sir? You're mine, Lily, if you want to be, for as long as you want to be. And if one day you decide you'd rather belong to somebody else, then you'll be that. But till that day, you're mine, and I'm yours. And ain't no paper, ain't no whiskey man, ain't no judge in the whole state of Kansas going to unmake." She started to cry. Not the silent tears from the night before. This one was bigger. This one had sound in it. This one rose from a place she'd been holding shut her entire short life. He didn't shush her. Didn't pat her, just held her and let her soak his shirt for the second day running. Said nothing. After a long while she hiccuped, dragged her sleeve across her nose, looked up. Quote 215, quote 216, quote 217, quote 218. Thomas Hale looked at the child in his lap. She pressed her face back into his shirt. She slept. He stayed in the chair. The fire burned down to ash, and he didn't feed it, didn't want to move. His arm went numb beneath her weight, then passed numb into a dull ache, and still he didn't shift. Around midday the snow started up again. He could hear it ticking against the window glass. He watched the light change on the floorboards, watched shadows crawl across the ceiling beams, and somewhere in the quiet a thought settled into him. Cold. Hard. A grown man's thought. Nate Pritchard was coming back. He would return with paper, or with men, or with a lie thick enough to fool a circuit judge. And when he did, Thomas Hale was going to face a choice, a real one, bigger than the plate he'd shared on Christmas Eve, bigger than the door he'd opened in the snow. He was going to have to decide whether he was willing to do more than defend his porch, whether he was willing to ride, whether he was willing to go into town, to stand before the sheriff, to stand before the judge, to stand before every soul in the county, if that's what it took, and look each one dead in the eye and say, "This child is mine, not by blood, not by transaction," because she stumbled out of a blizzard and through his door, and he answered that knock. An answer like that is binding. 11 years he'd been a ghost on this land. 11 years the bitter old widower who never showed at church, never showed in town, never showed for anything. 11 years letting the world slide past him, because sliding was easier than being left behind again. That was finished now. He looked down at the sleeping girl cradled in his arms. The words barely stirred the air, spoken to an empty room, to a woman 11 years beneath the earth. A log collapsed in the hearth. Nothing else answered. But Thomas Hale felt something stir behind his ribs, something dormant for a decade. He felt ready. Out beyond the thickening snow, past the ridge and the tree line and the bend in Kingston Road, Nate Pritchard stood talking to a man in a black coat, a man with a ledger, a man who, for the right coin, could make a piece of paper say whatever needed saying. Thomas woke in the chair with Lily still against his chest. He hadn't intended to sleep. He'd planned to sit up all night, watch the door, clean the rifle one more time. But his body had its own ideas, and sometime past midnight it simply quit on him. Now it was dawn, and a man was watching him through the window. Thomas caught the face for half a second before it withdrew. Grey beard, hat brim, nothing more. He did not move, did not breathe, did not let a single muscle betray him. Then came the knock. Quote, 235, quote. He released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Quote, 236, quote. She went without a word, without a question. She'd learned fast. Thomas pulled open the front door. Bill Mercer stood on the porch, and behind him a tall man in a black coat, spectacles, leather satchel. "Morning, Bill." "Morning, Thomas. This here's Judge Wilcott, up from Topeka, riding the winter circuit." "Judge?" "Mr. Hale." Thomas held his ground in the doorway. "Can we come in?" "What's this about, Bill?" "It's about a piece of paper Nate Pritchard walked into my office with at 5 o'clock this morning." Something dropped through Thomas's chest, cold as river stone. Quote 244, quote 245, quote 246, quote 247, quote 248, quote 249, quote 250. The judge's eyebrows climbed a fraction. "You know something about indenture law, Mr. Hale?" "I know my letters, and I know a bill of sale when I see one, even when it's dressed up in ribbon." "May we come in?" "Sir?" Thomas stepped aside. "Watch the chair, and keep your voices low. There's a child in the next room who hasn't slept through a full night in a week. I'd appreciate you not undoing the little rest she got." They entered. The judge surveyed the ranch house the way city men survey ranches, quick, dismissive, already composing his report behind his eyes. Bill Mercer did not look around. Bill Mercer looked at Thomas. "Thomas, where is she?" "Safe." "I need to see her." "Why?" "Because Judge Wilcott has to verify she matches the description on that contract. And because I need to hear her tell it in her own words, not yours." "Thomas," Bill's voice dropped low, "listen to me careful. That man walked into my office at 5 this morning carrying paper. Good paper. Signed paper. Witnesses and all. If I don't bring the child before the judge, if the judge don't hear her speak, then Nate Pritchard walks out of town come noon with a warrant. And that warrant says I hand her over to him, wearing my star, by law. You hearing what I'm saying to you? Bring her out, Bill. Bring her out, Thomas. You trust me or you don't." Thomas walked to the bedroom door, knocked soft. "Lily, honey, come on out." She appeared, small as ever, hair wild, swimming in one of his old shirts that hung past her knees because her dress was still drying by the fire. She spotted the two strangers and froze. "It's okay, darling. This here's Sheriff Bill, the one I told you about, the good one. And that's Judge Wilcott. He's here to listen to you." "Listen to me, sir?" "Yeah, just listen." "Listen to what?" Judge Wilcott lowered himself down, slow. Had the good sense not to reach for her. "Young miss, my name is Judge Francis Wilcott. I want you to know you are safe in this room. Nobody here will hurt you. Do you understand? I need to ask you some questions, and I need the truth from you, even when the truth is hard." "Will you do that?" "What is your name?" "Lily Carter." "How old are you?" "5, sir." "Is your mother living?" Lily went still. "I don't know, sir. When did you last see her? She left me under a tree 4 sundowns before I come here." "Why did she leave you?" Quote _ 277. "'Cause she sold me, sir." The judge's pen stopped moving. "She sold you? To whom?" "The man with the whiskey breath, Nate Pritchard." "For how much?" $6 and a jug, sir." "Did you want to go with him? Did your mother explain what was happening?" "She said I was a debt. Said she owed folks. Said a man come to the house and told her he'd take care of it if she'd give him me." "And she agreed?" "Yes, sir. She cried some, but she agreed." "What happened then?" "He took me. Put me in a wagon. We rode 3 days. On the 3rd night he drank the jug and fell asleep. I took his jerky, and I run. You ran?
Yes, sir. 3 nights running, then the snow come. Then I got lost.
Then I knocked on Mr. Thomas's door.
Sheriff?
Yes, Judge.
That contract is void.
Void, sir?
A parent cannot sell a child. They may indenture under very specific legal conditions, none of which apply here. What she describes is not indenture. It is traffic, and traffic in human beings, regardless of the victim's age or the color of her skin, has been illegal in this country since 1865. Mr. Pritchard's opinions notwithstanding. Any paper he holds is worth less than the ink that stains it. So she stays, Judge. She stays where she is safe, Mr. Hale. That is the question before this court now. She's safe here. I see that she is. Judge, Mr. Hale, I have ridden the Kansas circuit 21 years. I have witnessed a great many things. Children torn from loving homes on account of paper. Children trapped in terrible ones on account of blood.
And I have learned, the hard way, more than once, that paper and blood are the 2 worst instruments a judge can use to decide where a child belongs.
Then what do you use, sir? Judge Wilcott looked at Lily. She was pressed hard against Thomas's leg. One small hand twisted into the fabric of his trousers, like she'd already chosen her side. I use my eyes. He turned back to Bill. Sheriff, you will ride into town. You will inform Mr. Pritchard that his contract has been reviewed by the circuit court and found fraudulent. You will further inform him that I have opened an inquiry into the whereabouts of any previous wards he may have held, and that if he remains within city limits past sundown, he will be a guest of your jail until I determine how long he ought to stay there. Judge, the child stays with you, provisionally, for 30 days, pending completion of my inquiry and the location of any living blood relatives. At the end of those 30 days, if no legitimate family has come forward and the child expresses a wish to remain, I will sign guardianship papers in your name. Is that acceptable? Thomas Hale opened his mouth. Nothing came. He tried again. Good. Now I'd like a cup of coffee if there's any left. I have been on a horse since 4 o'clock. Yeah, Bill. I'm glad you opened that door on Christmas Eve. Me too, Bill. Lock it behind me and load the rifle anyway. Judge Wilcott can scratch any paper he pleases, but he cannot scratch the temper out of a man like Nate Pritchard. You hear me? I hear you. Bill rode out, took the judge with him. The road swallowed them both inside 10 minutes. Lily was still wound into Thomas's trousers. Yeah, honey. Did they say I can stay? They said yes, darling. 30 days. Then forever, if you want it. Forever, if you want it. I want it, sir. I want it now.
I don't need 30 days.
Well, the judge does. But that don't change nothing between you and me, Lily Carter. She released his trousers, climbed into the chair, drew her knees tight against her chest. Yeah, darling. What if my mama comes looking for me? Thomas sat across from her, rubbed his face with both hands. Honey, I got to be straight with you. Can I be straight? Your mama ain't coming for you. How do you know? 'Cause a mama who sells her child don't come back. She just don't, Lily. I'm sorry. I'm real sorry. But wherever she is, she's gone. And she ain't going to be the one knocking on this door. Lily nodded. I reckon, sir. You reckoned? Yes, sir. I've been reckoning it a while. You're too young to reckon something like that, darling. Maybe. But I did. She was quiet a long time. Then, Sir, can I call you something else? Like what? I don't know. Something that ain't sir. Thomas swallowed. You call me whatever feels right, Lily. What did your boy call you? The question caught him sideways, clean, sharp, out of nowhere. He called me Pa. Pa? Yeah. Was it a good word? Best word I ever heard, darling. Can I have it? Thomas Hale, 61 years old, twice a widower, 11 years a ghost, a man well acquainted with grief, put his face in his hands. And he wept, full out, shoulders shaking, no sound, just the kind of crying a man does when something he'd sealed shut for good cracks open anyway.
Lily climbed from her chair, walked to him, laid both small hands on his knee. "Pa, is that okay if I say it?" "Yeah, honey, that's okay. That's real okay." "Don't cry, Pa. I ain't crying, little one." "Yes, you are." "But it's all right. I figure some crying's the good kind." He pulled her into his lap, held her, rocked once, twice. "Yeah, Pa. You got any idea what you just done to this old man?" "No, sir." "Pa, you just put something back in his chest he thought was dead 11 years. Is that a good thing?" "That's the best thing, darling. That's the best thing there is." They sat a long while. The fire crackled. Outside, snow was falling again, softer now, a quiet kind of snow, the kind that covered things without burying them. Then she said it. "There was another girl." Thomas went still. "Another girl?" "With the whiskey man, before me." "What do you mean, Lily?" "In the wagon when he took me. There was a little sack stuffed under the seat, had a dress in it, red ribbon, real little, not my size, and a doll, wooden, one eye painted off." "It weren't mine, Pa. I never had a doll, not ever." "So whose was it? Did he say anything about it? About her?" He said the last one cried too much. Said if I cried too much, I'd go where she went." "Where'd she go, honey?" __quote _ 355 __. He didn't say, Pa, but he smiled when he said it, and it weren't a good smile. "I should have told you sooner." No, darling, you did right. You told me now. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to saddle a horse." "Pa, Lily, listen to me. There might be another little girl out there, or there might have been. Either way, the judge needs to hear it, the sheriff needs to hear it, and I will not sit by this fire and let that man ride out of town at sundown without somebody learning about a red ribbon and a wooden doll with one painted eye." "What do I do, Pa?" "You stay here. You bar the door behind me. You do not open it for anybody but me. Not Sheriff Bill, not the judge, not the preacher, not the Lord God Almighty. You wait for my voice." Then 3 knocks, slow, just like this. He rapped the table with his knuckles. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks, and my voice. "Yes, Pa. If anybody else comes, anybody at all, you go down that cellar and you don't come up. Not for fire, not for flood, not for anything on this earth. Not till you hear my voice." "Yes, Pa." "You got the poker?" "I got the poker." Quote 369. Good girl. Quote 370. "I told you something yesterday about not leaving while I still draw breath. That holds true. I am coming back. You hear me? I am coming back before dark. That is my word." "Yes, Pa. Say it back to me. You're coming back before dark, on your word." Good girl. Bar the door. He stepped into the cold. Behind him, the bar dropped into its cradle. Small footsteps padded to the window. He did not turn around. He swung up onto the old bay mare and pointed her toward town. And he rode harder than a man of 61 ought to ride through snow this deep. Harder than the mare wanted, harder than the road allowed. Because somewhere ahead, Nate Pritchard was loading his saddlebags at the livery. And somewhere behind, in a ranch house with a barred door, a 5-year-old girl had called him Pa for the first time in his life not 10 minutes prior. Thomas Hale had one task remaining on this earth: reach town, tell what he knew, and make goddamn certain Nate Pritchard did not ride free out of Kansas. Not while a red ribbon and a one-eyed wooden doll sat unaccounted for in that man's wagon. The mare dug deep. Snow kicked up behind her hooves in white bursts. And somewhere between the ranch and the town, past the second bend, where cottonwoods grew thick and the road pinched to a single track, a rider waited, pulled back into the trees, watching Thomas Hale come up Kingston Road, alone. The mare sensed him before Thomas did. She threw her head, skittered sideways. Thomas steadied her with his knees, one hand on the reins. The other hand, slow, deliberate, slid down toward the Henry in its scabbard. "Easy, girl, easy." The voice came from the cottonwoods on his left. "Step on out, Cal. The scarred man walked his horse from the tree line, rifle laid across the saddle. Not aimed, not yet. "Thought I caught your scent in there," Thomas said. "Wood smoke on a man who hasn't stood near a hearth. You're a long way from home, old-timer." "Road's open. Reckon it is. You planning to keep it that way, or you planning something foolish? Nate said you'd come." Nate was right. Said the old man wouldn't sit still. Said he'd ride for town first chance he got.
Said all we had to do was wait on the road. He shrugged. "And here you are." "Here I am. Where's Nate? __quote _ 386 _ town. Far end, in case you took the south route. He sent you alone? Didn't figure it'd take more than one." "Cal, how old are you, son?" "None of your concern." "I'll guess. 26, maybe 27. 25. 25. Thomas nodded slowly. "Well, I'm 61. I've sat a horse since before you were born. I've been shooting longer than your daddy's drawn breath. And today I carry something I haven't had in 11 years. What's that, old man?" "A reason." Cal's rifle began to rise. Cal's rifle never finished rising. Thomas had the Henry clear, levered, and put a round through Cal's right shoulder before the younger man's barrel cleared his own saddle horn. Cal screamed, pitched sideways, his horse bolted. Cal struck the snow shoulder first and stayed down. Thomas walked the mare over, unhurried, dismounted, kicked Cal's rifle 10 feet into the brush. "Oh God, oh Jesus, you shot me." "I did. You shot me, old man." "Cal, listen careful. I'm going to ask you some questions. Every time you lie, I press my boot into that shoulder. We clear?" "Oh God. We clear, son?" Yes, we're clear." "Good. Question 1. Where is Nate right now?" "Livery. Packing his saddlebags. Riding out at noon." Question 2. The girl before Lily. The one with the red ribbon. "Where is she?" Cal's face drained to the color of old paper. "What?" "You heard me. I don't quote 410. Where is she, Cal? Quote 411. Okay, stop. Quote 412. I had one before her. Name was Annie, 6 years old. Took her off a widow woman over in Shawnee County. Same way. Bought her from a drunk mama. She got away too. Ran straight into a prairie fire, summer before last. Nate told everybody she burned up. Did she? No. Where is she, Cal? I don't know, honest to God. He sold her to a man in Missouri, 2 years back, before I was running with him. That's all he told me. I swear." "You swear?" "On my mama's grave." "Your mama ain't dead. She is too. Cal, you are the worst liar I have ever met in my whole life. But I believe you about Missouri, because a man clever enough to invent that lie would have invented a better one. Get up." "I can't, Mr. Hale. My shoulder. I think it's broke." "It's broke. Get up anyway. You're riding in with me. You're going to tell the sheriff every word you just told me. You're going to tell the judge. Then you're going to tell them about Missouri. Every name, every town, every date. You understand me?" "Yes, sir. And if you try to run, if you so much as twitch the wrong direction, I'll put the next round somewhere a lot more tender than your shoulder. That clear?" Walk. They rode into town on a single horse, Thomas behind, rifle laid across his thighs. Cal in front, one arm dangling useless, blood stiffening on his coat in the cold. Bill Mercer stood on the steps of his office. He spotted them a quarter-mile out. Didn't move, didn't holler, didn't reach for iron, just waited. "Got a man here says he has business with you." "Does he now?" "Confession kind of business." "I see. There's another girl, Bill. One before Lily. Nate sold her to a man in Missouri 2 years back. Cal here's going to give you names." Bill's jaw